Let's continue with the videos on cognitive biases. So I'll just go through some of the other biases in this video quickly, without belaboring on the examples. We can do further studies on this. The other bias is basically called authority bias, and we spoke about this. And we said this is where people tend to be compliant and subservient in the face of authority. Research has shown that, and we said the best example would be the Stanford experiment, where you had mock prisoners with mock prison wardens, and the whole thing deteriorated into something that has never been seen. And we could see that to avoid punishment, most people were subservient to authority. Now, the problem with this is that authority or perception of authority can be mimicked. And this is to mean that if I want to create an allure of authority, I can be able to create certain aspects of the person that I'm trying to mimic, even though the inherent substance is not there. And this is what I mean by that. If I want to create what you call an allure of leadership, there are certain traits, leadership and power, there are certain traits that are assumed to be in this kind of people that are leaders or people that are in positions of power. There is how they look, there's how they talk, there's the charisma, and there's how they basically carry themselves. Now, I can mimic it up to a certain point before a person starts noticing that I am not the real thing. And this is how basically most of the scams are created. This is where I create authority bias, as it were. I come to you and I pretend to be an investment advisor. And the investment advisor over here with a leading bank, let's just call it Stanford Bank, a very leading bank in Africa, and I'm selling an investment product. Therefore, I cannot come dressed in shabby shoes, shabby clothes. I must be sharp and well groomed. That is the first illusion that I'm creating. I'm well groomed and I look the part. It could be accessorizing using watches, it could be accessorizing using expensive phones, and so forth and so forth. After I'm done with that, I must create also the air of the company is real. Therefore, I have offices which are mock offices for the sake, and these have people who pretend to be bankers or whatever. And then further, I have to create an illusion of clientele. Now, once this 3 bit over here is done, the person is convinced that I am the real deal and I am an authority in that, even though they have not tested the actual product and seen that indeed I am an authority. Therefore, this here is where you're trying to sway people through authority bias. I'm creating an air of authority. Now, while this is a simplistic one, let me just give one that affects most of us. This is where we tend to follow advice of people that we assume have authority in a certain area, even though they may not have it, or even though they may be misleading us. For example, the most recent, there was an IPO that was being done, and most of the investment and the leaders then who are gurus and tycoons were coming up and saying Kengen is the IPO to buy, Kengen is the IPO to buy, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And the reason why most people bought is not because they asked themselves, is the company sound? It is not because of that. The reason why they bought is because a person they assume is an authority has advised them to buy the company. Therefore, decision is flawed because the person should do due diligence to find out if the company is indeed sound and a going concern. This is a clear example of authority bias. Another example of authority bias is where people are given spiritual advice by spiritual leaders And most of the advices are very misleading, and the reason why people follow them blindly is because, again, they assume these people are an authority in whatever they are talking about. YouTube is full of people that pretend to be authorities. The social media is full of people who pretend to be influencers, even though they do not have the grit to support whatever they are saying, simply because people are easily influenced by authority or illusions of authority. Now we go to the other bias, and this is called the recency bias. And this is where the most recent information that I have about something affects the decision that I make. Now, recency bias affects you in this way. Let us assume I am in the public procurement department, and I am in NYS over here, and I hear my colleague or friend called Kamau has been arrested over allegations of fraud, and they have taken everything that he ever owned, and everything is frozen. The question then becomes, the question then becomes, do I become rational given the most recent information? Will I be? Chances are high that I am not likely to be, because of recency bias. I'm looking at the most recent information and I'm using it to guide my behavior. And this is the same thing as comically, after you've just watched a horror movie and you just turn off the lights, there's always that sense of fear and horror as you go to bed, because you always assume something is out there lurking out. Again, recency bias. A friend comes and tells you, by the way, so and so has been robbed, and they were using a certain route along Juja roads. Just using the same roads. What happens when you go along that road? You decide, no, it is not safe, I will go using another route. But is it true really that it is not safe? The reality is that you are reacting to information that you've just been told. That is recency bias. Then you go to the sunk cost bias. And the sunk cost bias, this is where we continue in a certain path. We continue in a certain path because we are already invested in it, in terms of resources, either money or time. Let me give two examples. Example number one, you had paid for a concert to go and watch Sauti Sol. Since the pandemic restrictions have just been lifted, and you paid expensively. Let's assume a ticket costed 10,000 shillings, and you come to the day of the concert, which is Friday, and you're sickly, you have a serious cold, you're feverish, and you have all the symptoms suggesting that you have a flu. You have a flu, and you are sincerely, you can't function properly, as it were. But yet, the consideration that you will make whether to decide to go or not to go, it is not how you are feeling currently in terms of the symptoms that you have. It is how much you have invested for that decision. You spent 10,000 of your money to go to that concert. Therefore, come rain, come sunshine, come fever or flu, you're going to that concert. This is an example of a sunk cost bias at play. Example 2, you have been dating a person and you dated them for only 6 months. Ending this relationship will be very, very easy. But let me just take it as a step further. It is 6 months and you have invested jointly with this person assets worth 15 million shillings. Is it easy to walk out of the relationship even if it is irretrievably damaged? The reality is that you will ignore every other thing but the 15 million, and you will decide to stay or find your own way to recover this. Therefore, again, this is sunk cost bias. Last example, you've been dating someone for 15 years vis-a-vis 6 months. Now, which one is the easiest to walk away from, this or this? The reality is that this one is easier to walk away from than this one, because again the investment of time is very, very high. That is sunk cost bias. So ask yourself, are you being affected by sunk cost, the sunk cost effect when you're making decision? Now we go to the other one, which is confirmation bias. And under confirmation bias, this is where we delete any information that does not agree with us, and we want to confirm things that agree with us. For example, if I believe something is X, Y, Z, I will look to the environment to confirm what I believe, not to disconfirm, but actually confirm what I actually believe. I believe all men are yada yada yada. Therefore, I'll go to the environment to confirm. This is confirmatory bias, because you already hold a certain mental position and you go to the environment to confirm that mental position. And sure enough, you're going to find that confirmation in the environment. And this is where we only pick information that agrees with us and discard every other thing. Now, the truth is that every belief has a polarity to it. If I believe that all men are yada yada yada, there is this side to that coin and there is this side to that coin. So if you want to overcome the confirmatory bias, you must try to disprove it rather than prove it, because you are already holding the positive side of it. You want to disprove it. Is it true that all men are not this and this and that? That is the proper way to go about it. But whenever we want to confirm things that we believe, that is confirmatory bias. If I am investing, I will say the market is going up, and I will look for proof using the price chart, using the economic analysis to say the financial markets are going up. If I believe then that Manchester is going to win, I don't have another example. Manchester United is going to win a certain match, and I have already placed a bet in it. I'm invested in it, and I will look for all confirmation to that effect. I want to confirm Manchester indeed will win that match. Therefore, these are the three biases. Let us just go to part C of the other biases. Thank you.